Hi, I'm Gary and welcome to Jargon Free Help. It'll come as no surprise to you that this week I've got my hands on one of these, an iPad. They finally come out here in the UK and I have to say I'm very pleased with it. There are lots of people out there who aren't sure about them. A lot of people who've got them who are very happy. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown about it. I'm also going to meet up with someone called Mark Brill, who's a mobile expert, give us his thoughts on it as well. But first up, I just want to show you, give you a quick rundown of what it's like. It works two ways, a bit like the iPhone. It works this way in portrait and it also works this way as well in landscape, so you can choose which way to use it. I've been using it a lot like this. Now it's got a lot of features on here, a lot like an iPhone. Some people have said it's just an iPhone but bigger, but it's not really. It's got that much more in it. And yes, it does look like an iPhone when you do look at it, but you do have the same touch screen here. Things that work really well, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of it. Things like photos are just great. I can do that. I can look at my photos. I can just have a quick look to see what's inside a folder. If I tap on it, I can look at my pictures and I can swipe through them just as I would on an iPhone as well. But they're actually much clearer, much sharper, and just they look fantastic. You can also set up as a slideshow, so you can actually get it just running with that slideshow as well, just like one of those picture frames that you see. So that's photographs. The other thing that I like is the videos. So I'm just going to quickly go to that. And if I press play here, you'll actually see that I've actually got some videos already on here. And you can see they're just absolutely great. This is The Return of the Pink Panther. Great film. I can go to some others on here as well. You'll see actually I've got some of my work on here and you'll just see the quality that they look really good. In fact, you probably need to see one for yourself to actually just realise how good it actually is. But if I just run this, you'll see that the quality is just quite astounding. A lot of people overlook the video thing. You can download video. You can also take your DVDs using things like Handbrake. You can actually copy them onto here. Just be warned that if you are copying DVDs onto here, there are copyright restrictions. You shouldn't really do it. But if you're using it for yourself, well, that's something that you're just going to have to make that decision yourself as to whether or not to do that. So that's called Handbrake. It's a great app. You put it on your PC or your Mac and you can just copy DVDs onto your iPad, iPhone and iPod Touch. So that's great. So videos just look absolutely amazing on this. It does do other things as well. You do have iTunes, and in here you can actually go and find all the things you would find on the usual iTunes store as well. So as you can see, easy to use. There are things like the Metro, they've got an app on here as well. And you can see that the Metro is the morning paper in London and in some other cities as well. And look at the quality of this. It's just absolutely astounding. And I can zoom in so I can actually read what I want, which is great. And speaking of reading, there are also the iBooks, which a lot of people think are a bit of a gimmick. But I have to say, open it up and here's my bookshelf. I can just go to something like the iPad user guide. I can flick through and you can see it does things like this as well. I can turn it this way too. And I could move it backwards and forwards. I can bookmark pages. I can find if I want to find things as well. So if I want to look for email, I can do that. And there you go. And I can just go directly to that page by tapping on it. So just fantastic. I think this is going to be great. They're going to put magazines on here too, so hopefully this will all be really good and you'll really enjoy it. So that's a very quick look at all of this. It does have an iPod player just like you have on your iPhone and iPod Touch, so I could actually listen to music or watch podcasts and things like that. So I've got a whole load here that I can actually go through and play as well. There's some of the features. Obviously there are loads of apps on here. You've also got your mail, you've also got Safari for looking up on things on the internet, and also you will find that the Jargon Free website will actually work really well on the iPad as it does on the iPhone too. And there are a lot of apps that have been specifically made for working or enhanced to work on the iPad. There's Epicurious for looking for recipes. You're going to find all sorts of things. Time Magazine, Shazam has been updated to work on it as well. You might have seen that in one of my earlier podcasts. Wikipedia has something called Wikipanion. That's on here. A lot of these have been updated for the iPad. So rather than talk about this week's app of the week, the one thing I'm going to point out is if you do go to the iTunes store on the iPad or even on your computer, Just search for iPad and you will get a whole load of apps that have already been updated to work on the iPad. They're not the only ones, but you'll notice that there's a whole list there as well. And again, like so many are free. So this is a great bit of kit. It's very solid, I have to say. Do get a case for it. Be careful with cleaning the screen as well. Use a lint-free cloth. Maybe slightly damp, but be careful. Make sure it's switched off when you do it. So that is a very quick rundown of the iPad, and I'm going to show you more of this as time goes on because I'm sure this is going to be very popular. You're probably aware this has exceeded all expectations of sales in the UK and everywhere else as well. So I'm sure more of you will want to know more about this and what you're going to find out here as well. Hi Mark, thanks for taking a bit of time out. Now I wanted to talk to you about the thing that's all the rage at the moment, which is the iPad.
Oh, yeah.
And I can see that you've got what you like to think is an iPad right next to you, your giant calculator.
Yes, I will show you my iPad.
That's,
first in the country.
First in the country, giant calculator, which looks pretty useful actually. Some people probably say more useful than the iPad. But you're really into the mobile stuff and you've got some thoughts about where you actually see the iPad fitting in. And you said to me that it's going to be really good for something in particular. What was that?
Yeah, I think, the thing about the iPad is people are trying to work out where exactly does it sit as a piece of technology. Is it a mobile phone? No. Is it a notepad computer? No, it kind of sits in between. But then, because of that, I think people aren't really sure how it's going to be used. I think the iPad is going to sit very well as a home device, and it's going to be used in a context of what I call the sofa surfer.
That's a great term. I must admit, I've used that myself and people have been complimenting me, but I have been saying I didn't coin the phrase. I think you may have coined it because I haven't seen it anywhere else.
I am trying to lay claim to the phrase. When I came up with it, I did check on Google, and the only other sofa surfers was an Australian band that I found of the same name. But yeah, I believe so.
I must admit, I can see the iPads that I will pick it up, sit on the sofa, look something up very quickly, put it down, perhaps even look something up on IMDb since I'll be watching television anyway. And you're saying that really that's where the iPad is going to take over.
I think so, and I think the problem with the laptop is it's still, even though it sits on your lap, it is still very much a lean-forward technology. So once you're using it, that's it. You tend to be engaged with that machine, and you're ignoring your partner, your family, and so on. Whereas I think what's happening increasingly, and we've seen this, for example, a study from Orange called Exposure and Exposure 2 showed that actually most smartphone usage was at home. And what we saw is people typically, you're sitting on the sofa, with the family, you'll pick it up, you'll check your emails, you check your Facebook status, and so on. And I think that's where the iPad sits. It's not as distracting as a laptop. And the iPad is the kind of thing, I can imagine it just being chucked on the sofa and somebody in the family picks it up because they want to look at something, settle that argument about the actor in a particular movie, so straight into IMDb, and all those kinds of things. And I think that's going to be its role.
Other manufacturers are going to look at creating similar things, tablet PCs effectively, which is what the iPad is. So I get the feeling that that's the death of the netbook. What do you think?
Yeah, it all depends on what we see as the place of the netbook. I see a lot of netbooks used in business. So you're on the train, you need to type a document, you need to get a presentation ready. And I think that still has its place, because I don't see how you can do that on an iPad. Even with a keyboard, you then got to start propping the thing up and that kind of stuff. And what it just means is that you're kind of recreating the netbook with a computer that isn't necessarily designed to do that. Whereas I think the iPad is specifically about browsing, reading, gaming, those kinds of things. So I think it actually, I'm not sure whether it will replace the netbook. I think in some circumstances it will, but I think on the whole, it's actually creating a whole new channel in itself.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. It's got a lot going for it, because there are things it does do very well, like the video and the gaming, and there's also the books and magazines on there. You're not convinced about the books though, are you?
I'm not at all convinced about books and magazines on the iPad. I understand that some people want to do that, and there is going to be a small market for it, but I'm aware that a lot of big publishers are investing large sums in actually moving their content onto the iPad, and I think that could be a big mistake. I think when you look at it, to some extent what they think is the iPad will do to reading and publishing what iTunes did to music. But actually, if you look at it, the thing with iTunes is it was needed, it was waiting to happen. Music was already digital, it was already on CD, and all the CD did was simply move the music from the record shop to the home. And as soon as you could find a system that replaced that, iTunes, the MP3, then it became very, very successful, death of the CD. But if you look at magazines and books, I don't think we're crying out for replacement yet. If people were, then we'd be downloading everything online already, we'd be using PDFs, and we wouldn't be buying books and magazines in shops. And although the market's suffering, I don't see the death of the book market happening just yet. I think we've got quite a way to go. So yes, I think there is a market for those electronic books. I can imagine going on holiday, you're going to load up your iPad with half a dozen books, what with the baggage charges and Ryanair these days, you're not going to be wanting to take hundreds of books on a plane. So you can take your iPad, it's really, really useful for that. And you were talking earlier about using it for reference books, and I think that's brilliant, where you can bookmark pages, you can do searches. So it's obviously got its use, but I don't see it actually replacing publishing. I think this idea of an electronic reader has a long way to go. Ultimately, I don't think there's anything yet that can replace, the high resolution, portability, indestructibility of a bit of paper.
You're very sceptical, like me, about the books actually being used on it, because I actually feel that videos, games, and actually browsing will be better. Why don't you see books working?
To me, the reading part of it is a spin-off rather than a primary aim.
Yes.
For me, I think the main aim is going to be the sofa surfer. It's going to be that thing that you just pick up and do whatever you want. Social media is what's driving our online experience these days, and I think it's going to be much more about accessing Facebook, sharing photos and that kind of stuff.
You've mentioned it as for sofa surfing, so what exactly do you see people looking up when they're actually sitting on their sofa?
The Orange study into this, it was quite obvious that people are using their smartphones a lot at home for basic kind of browsing, and the evidence is that the O2's network is absolutely creaking under the strain of iPhone uses, most of which is people are just updating their Facebook statuses. If people stop that, O2 would actually be working a lot faster and a lot better. So it's quite clear that that's what people are using their phones for. So what are people using their PCs and their home computers for? Well, I think that tends to be for the more kind of heavy-duty browsing and so on. Would you book a holiday through your iPhone? Probably not. Would you? You're going to sit there. You're going to open all the tabs. You can look at the pictures. You might watch a video and so on. So it's those kinds of things that people are going to be using their home PCs for. And I think the iPad is going to replace the smartphone. The way the smartphone is used at home at the moment. I think that's the place that it's going to sit.
But for me, it will also be useful for looking at videos, photos, and things like that, and very good for demonstrating what I do. Mark, that's great. We've talked about a lot of things, and I think we might be eating our words. This is all recorded, so people are going to come back to us and say, you said that these books weren't going to work on the iPad. And anyway, thanks very much for that. That's really interesting from Mark. I guess we'll get to see in time whether or not he's right about the books. I personally do think it's the videos and the photos that work really well. There are things like Pages. There's also numbers on here. Pages is a word processor. It's very good, and you can transfer things onto the Mac or the PC with it as well as a Word document, and the same with numbers from that into Excel too. So actually very handy. You can use it for doing productive things. It's not just for looking at content. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Happy computing.